The second video kind of got cut off, so I'm going to read you these questions and we will get started. Okay, here are some questions to discuss after looking at other plans. Did any plans save all historic buildings and come in under budget? What was the most convincing reason a team gave for why their plan was the best? And are there things you considered other than cost?
In the activity, you had 4 different kinds of flood protection that you could build to save Beachtown: seawalls, levees, building on stilts, and wetlands. $1 million might have sounded like a lot of money at first, but you couldn't build all of these things and stay within that budget. You needed to pick and choose among the different kinds of flood protection to figure out a combination of them that would protect all the historic buildings. As is almost always the case, there's more than one way to solve a problem. A group of us here at Mystery Science did this activity ourselves, and here was one solution we came up with. We knew we needed to protect these buildings from storm surge. We could do that with seawalls or with wetlands. Since wetlands cost less, we decided to go with those. It would take 4 wetlands to protect all those buildings, costing a total of $800,000. But we still needed to protect these buildings here from river flooding. We decided to use levees to do that. That took 5 levees, which cost $250,000. Adding all of that up, that came out to $1,050,000, just over budget. So we asked ourselves, is there a way to cut costs? We realized that protecting this one building right here was using both a levee and a wetland, a total of $250,000. But there's a cheaper way to protect a building from storm surge and river flooding: stilts. So we took out one wetland and one levee and put that building on stilts instead, and did the math again. 3 wetlands plus 4 levees plus 1 building on stilts equals $950,000. We did it. That's under $1 million. It's within budget. In engineering, the town budget was an example of what we call a constraint. A constraint is something that is limiting what you can do when you solve a problem. It's the idea that you always have to work with what you've got. So if you have a limited amount of money to spend on something, that's a constraint. We almost always have a limited amount of money to spend on a project, so money is almost always a constraint. But it's not the only kind of constraint. Like, say a town member had said, "I hate mosquitoes. I don't want any wetlands in town." That would be another example of a constraint. Or you might have had a limited number of materials to build with. Maybe you had no wood for house stilts. In that case, you would have one less option to protect the city against flooding. That's a constraint. Constraints are just a part of life. It doesn't mean you can't solve the problem, it just means you have to get creative. Being creative to work within constraints is a skill that you can develop with practice. Engineers have to get really good at it. They're always having to think about constraints, like how much money they can spend, or which materials they can use, or any deadlines they have to meet. But it's not just engineers who have to deal with constraints. I guarantee you have constraints right now in your everyday life, and you can practice getting creative with them. Maybe you go to the movies and your parents tell you that you can spend $5. There's popcorn, there's drinks, there's candy. You won't be able to get everything. Do you even have enough money to get 2 things? What can you buy? Well, you can get creative. Maybe you and your friend decide to split the cost of the popcorn. You probably also have to choose how you spend your time after school. Like, I bet it's challenging to play with friends and play sports and join an after-school club. There's just not enough time. But you can get creative when you think about it. Maybe you decide to join an after-school club that combines sports and your friends. You get the idea. Keep thinking about it. See if you notice other constraints in your life, and come up with creative ways to work with them, just like an engineer. Have fun and stay curious.